So it's my pleasure to introduce you to three people working in the area of plant health, who are here to talk about their careers. Um, so first up, we have Matt Elliot, who is on the RSB register as a senior plant health professional, and works at the Royal Botanic Gardens of Edinburgh.
Hi everybody. It's good to be here talking to you today. I want to take you through, my career, I suppose, before and after I found science. It's an unusual route that I've taken, so hopefully you'll find it interesting. So, I'm a plant health and biosecurity scientist at the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh, and I actually grew up on the Isle of Man. I'm just waiting for my next slide to hopefully load. There we go. I grew up in the Isle of Man. I had lots of jobs there to make ends meet, but I basically left school with very few qualifications. Just did anything to get by really. And then in 2000, I joined the army and served with the Queen's Gurkha Signals in Sierra Leone, Iraq, Kosovo, and other places. During this time, I also kind of travelled widely on exercises, the Caribbean and America and South Africa. And then when it came to leaving the army and deciding what I wanted to do, I thought that I'd always enjoyed horticulture. So I I moved to Scotland and went to Oak Ridge in central belt of Scotland, one of the Shruk campuses, to do a HNC in horticulture. That was a good start, and I kind of got quite into that, and then moved to the Botanics to do their degree in horticulture with plantsmanship, which is kind of a unique botanical horticulture course. Really takes you through much more kind of in depth on plant distributions and things like that. And so I did a thesis on Juniper cedrus, which is an endemic species to the Canary Islands, where we did an IUCN Red List status report for this species on 4 of the Canary Islands. But this time, this course really ignited my interest in science for sure. It was a great place to learn. I then applied and got a PhD at St Andrews University, with the lab work being carried out at SASA, which is Science and Advice for Scottish Agriculture, and the PhD that was funded by the Scottish Government. It looked at the epidemiology of Phytophthora ramorum and Phytophthora conoviae, at 2 outbreaks in Scotland. These were Benmore Botanic Garden and Broddick Castle Garden on Arran, and basically I was developing spore trapping techniques and soil sampling techniques to find phytophthora in environmental samples. Essentially, we also created a predicted kind of risk map for Phytophthora ramorum in soil at Benmore Botanic Garden, so a useful management tool for those guys. During this time, I was also lucky enough to do a study trip in California at UC Davis and Berkeley, and up and down the West Coast, basically to look at Phytophthora ramorum and doing airplane surveys and things like that. It affects a native species there, a tan oak. So that was very interesting. During this time, Phytophthora ramorum had really started kicking off on larch in the UK, and so I did a follow-on project still at SASA to investigate the epidemiology of ramorum around larch forests, essentially how far it spreads from larch. That was very successful. Then from there, I moved to forest research, where I basically took all of that kind of sampling, environmental sampling experience and techniques to work on other phytophthora and lots of other diseases. At that time, Phytophthora Cedri was just starting really. Been found in juniper in Scotland, and also on Ostrocedrus chilensis in Argentina. So I went to Patagonia to study it there as well, and that's what that photograph is on the right. I then moved into a bit more policy. I did 5 years of policy in practice at the World Trust, initially helping site managers understand the kind of disease threats. So ash buyback was really getting a hold at that point. And Phytophthora on larch as well. And then later on in my time at Woodland Trust, I started kind of advocating for better biosecurity because of the pressure that the trees were different from pest diseases. You've probably all seen that graph on the right several times. It's there's been a significant uptake in the introduction of pests and diseases. And then all this kind of policy and practice experience I brought along back to Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh, so kind of come full circle really from being a student. Came back in 2021, and so yeah, my job now is just carrying out innovative research on pest and disease risks and biosecurity. We've got 4 gardens, and I managed kind of the biosecurity related to those. We were the first public garden to become Plant Healthy certified in the UK. So this is a standard, the plant health management standard, which we're externally audited on each year. And this means that our biosecurity standards are always kind of improving, or always looking for improvements. Alongside that, I do lots of plant health and biosecurity research. The best practice guide down on the right is something that I've been working on recently, trying to improve biosecurity in the wider environment. We've also done lots of other stuff around. We created a web tool for professional operators to access pest information. We looked at bulk aggregates and lots of other things. I recently started a project on firewood movement and the risks associated with that. We're also building on this biosecurity best practice for conservation. We're going to create a resource so that people can fill out their own biosecurity plans before they do any conservation work. And as Ian mentioned at the start of today, Scotland's Plant Health Centre, I also work there as a impact officer. I cover 2 sectors, and that is horticulture and the wider environment. And the Plant Health Centre has been a really fantastic way of talking to stakeholders and getting their ideas and their concerns and building or research around those, so that anything we produce is really useful for stakeholders and not just kind of theoretical. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say, I think. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, you've really been involved in, like you said, all sorts of facets of plant health. So it's been really interesting. And thank you. So next up, we have someone from the Animal and Plant Health Agency, APHA. She is called Katharine Farrell, and I hope she's also here.
Thanks for inviting me today to talk about my career in plant health. Thanks to Matt and Tia. It's really interesting talks so far. I'm a resilience manager at the Animal and Plant Health Agency, an executive agency of Defra, an arm's length body of government. I'm going to talk about key skills for being resilient in a changing work environment. And as a career changer, this has been essential for me, adapting and changing. It's particularly pertinent during Carers Week this week. I describe mine as a squiggly career. The excellent book, The Squiggly Career, came out in 2020, the year I joined the Plant Health and Seeds Inspectorate, which is part of APHA operational delivery, to train at Heathrow Airport. I haven't had a career ladder. I've had significant caring responsibilities over the last 17 years, during which time I've prioritised professional training and development, resulting in a career pivot from head of an editorial department at a not-for-profit members organisation for lawyers through community gardening, botanical horticulture, plant health, resilience, and now contingency planning as a civil servant. By the time I reached university, I'd had a life event, a major life event happened during my gap year. And so by the time I started university, I was in a different place mentally. I started a degree in German and Russian, but my heart wasn't in it, much as I love language learning. It was the year of the Rio Earth Summit, the first UN Environment Conference, and I wanted to be actively involved in protecting the environment. And the media was full of burning rainforests and the end of the Soviet era. So my motivation was environmental and food supply and food security. I switched to a human ecology degree aligned with geography, studying our relationship with the environment and health, very similar to what is now called a One Health approach, recognizing the interconnectedness of animal, plant, human and planetary health. I studied a local permaculture project on one of the most deprived housing estates in the UK in Bradford. When I graduated, it was during a recession and there were no jobs in the environmental sector. I worked in various admin roles, travelled in Brazil and Mexico, and on return, I worked in communications for a major bank and then academic publishing for an online bibliography for the social sciences. This fit with my values of learning and communicating. I moved into legal publishing, managing a team as a head of editorial at a not-for-profit members organisation for lawyers. I really enjoy working with subject matter experts, and this role allowed me to develop online publishing skills, build networks and expertise, and travel to conferences in, for example, Croatia and the US. Then I became pregnant with twins who were born prematurely. I took extra time out after maternity leave, and I also became a single parent, which required a major rethink career-wise, as publishing was not a flexible industry at that time. I left, my old way of working didn't fit my new circumstances, so I left publishing, took some freelance editing and proofreading, and decided to take every opportunity I could to retrain and learn new skills before my children started school. In Waltham Forest, East London, where I live, the brilliant social enterprise and food growing and training cooperative Organically had community growing projects, including at my local children's centre in Walthamstow. I trained with them and volunteered, and then worked for them, delivering sessions in growing food, which brought me closer to my values of connecting with others, as well as continuing learning, communicating and protecting nature. Other great organisations trained with include Women's Environment Network, Capital Growth and the RHS campaign for school gardening. I pushed ahead to train full-time in horticulture level 3 courses at Capel Manor College, studying for City and Guilds and RHS qualifications, and moved on to the Historic Botanic Garden Training Programme, working at Middleton House Gardens in North London. This was my first experience of working in a glasshouse, and I was hooked. It also introduced me to pests and diseases and integrated pest management. I also developed a bit of a thing for nerines and tender plants generally. Please ignore the broom handle in the corner of this photo, but I had to get a pic of nerines in. The Historic Botanic Garden Training Programme was a 2-year programme then. It's now a 1-year programme, I believe, with placements all over the UK. A great learning experience, studying alongside full-time work, alongside working full-time as a horticulturist. I still have a WhatsApp group with my fellow trainees 10 years later. This led me to apply for the Kew Specialist Certificate in Display and Nursery Glasshouses. All in all, that was 7 years of horticultural training while working and also self-employed, still proofreading, so it can pay to be a details person. This is a brilliant 1-year programme, working across all the glasshouses at Kew, and I can't speak highly enough of it. Main pests and diseases found were mealybugs, scale insects, aphids, thrips, viruses, and potentially bacterial diseases. We've got thousands of plants in close proximity to each other and to humans. Also worked with seeds plants in the quarantine unit and material brought in from science field trips, seeds from the Millennium Seed Bank, and an amazing work experience trip to Zurich succulent plant collection, which is another top recommendation. Again, learning from experts at top of their field is the best way to learn, and it was great to supervise students on placements too. If you are looking for work experience, I would say go for it there. Just a couple more pics showing the difference between display and nursery. Here the orchids have to be transplanted into display pots, having been transported from the tropical nursery behind the scenes, then dressed with gravel or bark, placed very carefully in this cabinet. Tiptoeing around these plants is a very tricky and two-person job. Got someone outside the glass saying left a bit, right a bit. And once they've been on display for a week or two, send back to the nursery to go back on the bench. Plenty of opportunity for pests and diseases to spread between glass houses. Biological controls and chemical controls are used throughout the glass houses with a year-round integrated pest management program, including for cockroaches, the only downside to working in glass houses in my view. In 2020, I was furloughed. I did start to study plant pathology at Harper Adams Uni, but was unable to continue due to caring for my elderly mother and moving back to full-time work. My mum is the original gardener in my life, and I could not have done any of this without her support. I joined APHA, training at Heathrow for 5 months, and then working inland, including on an interception of pine processionary moth over 6 months, which resulted in a change to the legislation for importing host species. I don't have pictures of my plant and health and seed inspector work because it's sensitive to trade, so the next couple of slides are more generic. PHSI was an excellent experience for 2 years in an operational role, learning about how our food and horticultural trade works. For example, cut flowers and chilies being flown in from all over the world daily to airports across the UK, requiring documentary checks, inspections, serving statutory plant health notices, and issuing phytosanitary certificates for exports, including for used farm machinery. There is lots of information on gov.uk about contingency planning and regular updates on animal, plant, bee and tree health outbreaks, including maps, so I recommend spending some time searching on there. In contingency planning, I'm part of a team around 30 at APHA. We work to the national contingency plans in England, collaborating closely with devolved governments and with Defra colleagues in policy and risk and horizon scanning. Also working to specific pests or disease specific contingency plans. Early detection and response, phytosanitary inspections and biosecurity protocols. The focus is on eradication, preventing or limiting the spread or containment, involving surveillance programs and rapid response. This crucial work enables GB to make statements of country freedom or pest-free areas for quarantine and notifiable pests and diseases such as Xylella fastidiosa or Colorado beetle. And we support outbreaks of avian influenza and blue tongue, and there is considerable preparation ongoing for a potential outbreak of foot and mouth disease, which has had some cases in Central Europe this year. Also worked at Forestry Commission in 2024 with a biosecurity team, delivering training on a minimum standard of personal biosecurity, and with subject matter experts in the plant health forestry team and forest research colleagues, raising awareness of pests and diseases such as Ips typographus and oak processionary moth. Brené Brown, nice quote there, resonates with me. She's very quotable. I've constantly stretched out my comfort zone and tried new opportunities through necessity, and now it's become a learning habit. I encourage you to do the same, to find opportunities that suit you. Many on the call will have caring responsibilities or other life challenges requiring career rethinks. And next steps, enjoying learning using AI, data management, producing outbreak reports, and training in crisis management. The One Health approach makes perfect sense to me as a human ecologist. Here are some resources which we shared later, and there's my contact details. So just finally, if you have any questions after today, feel free to get in touch. And thanks very much to the RSB and Defra for inviting me today to share my story so far. I hope this shows that there is a place for everyone in plant health.
Thanks so much, Katharine. I love the expression of a squiggly career. I'm going to use that a lot more often, I think. So finally rounding out our trio, we've got Katia Hougaard, who's recently done a PhD at Imperial and is now a plant health and science communicator. Katia, are you ready to share your slides?
I certainly am. Let's see, I'm just going to click slide share here. Stop. Okay. Can everybody see my slides?
Yeah, looks good to me.
All right, wonderful. Let's go. Hello, everybody. My name is Katia Hougaard, and today it's my great honor to share my journey in plant science here at the Royal Society of Biology's Plant Health Series Summer Conference 2025. Thank you all for being here. Let's start things off by giving a brief introduction to who I am and where I'm from. Let's just say my life story has been about following my curiosity, specifically my curiosity about plants. I spent my growing up between the UK and the USA, and I now live full-time in the UK, which has always felt more like home to me, to be honest. Plants have been a lifelong fascination for me. My affinity for working with plants and wanting to know how plants work started through learning organic vegetable gardening with my family at our home here in the UK. I recently completed a PhD in plant biology at Imperial College London under the supervision of Professor Colin Turnbull. Let's just say what started in the garden led to earning a doctorate in plant immunology. And what's next for me? My new career direction is science communication and social enterprise entrepreneurship based around bringing plant science to plant lovers. Oops. Oh, excuse me. I'd like to talk a bit about my academic journey that led me to where I am today. My academic journey began in Texas, in the USA, with a biology degree that I started at Austin Community College. From Austin Community College, I transferred to the University of Texas at Austin, affectionately known as UT. I earned a Bachelor of Science with a focus on plant biology at the University of Texas. My 4 years at the University of Texas were probably some of the highlight of my academic experience. It has international cultural diversity, as well as a strong feeling of university identity. I received a well-rounded science education from many memorable professors. The highlight of my undergraduate experience was undergraduate research, which I consider a passport to science. It made me so happy seeing all the passionate undergraduate researchers here at today's event. This is such a great investment in all of you's futures. At UT Austin, I took part in the Freshman Research Initiative program, which is an academic/research program where undergrads conduct original research under the supervision of supervisors, postdoc researchers, and PhD students. I worked with Dr. Stan Rue and Dr. Greg Clark on a project looking at the role of extracellular ATP as a signaling molecule that controls stomata opening and closing. These two are considered to be champions of undergraduate research, and I got to contribute to the advancement of this scientific topic and participate in the scientific community at UT. From there, going to graduate school to further my education was a natural choice at that time. I decided to move back to the UK because I was attracted by all of the exciting plant biology research going on in this country. I began with a Master's of Research in Plant and Microbial Sciences at Imperial College London. This was a perfect segue into my PhD project, which was fully funded by the President's PhD Scholarship Program with additional support from the British Society of Plant Pathology. In my PhD program, I was supervised by Professor Colin Turnbull in a plant immunology project looking at the role of R genes against aphids. In addition to doing a very well-rounded research project that combined working with the live aphids in plants, as well as the molecular biology side of the research and looking at plant physiological responses, I was also in a lab manager role for much of my PhD. I also took a very active role in mentoring and training undergraduate and master's students. Something I'm very grateful to Imperial for is all of the professional development training I received through the Early Career Researcher Institute. I'd now like to tell you a little bit about my PhD project. My PhD project focused on the aspect of the plant immune system that is our genes and effectors. They are locked in a molecular arms race. Let's first talk about effectors. Effectors are highly diverse biological molecules that are found in bacteria, fungi, fungus-like organisms, and insects. Although very diverse, they have a shared function, and that is to suppress the plant's innate defenses. However, plants are not innocent victims. They have fought back through the evolution of plant resistance genes. These genes, which usually code for nucleotide binding site leucine-rich receptors called NLRs for short, control specific pathways with bespoke responses that have evolved to defeat specific types of pests and pathogens. The combinations of effectors in the pest or pathogen and the R genes in the plant determine the outcome of a pest and pathogen and plant interaction. Let's take a look at that here through this infographic I made. This is what happens when different combinations of NLRs and effectors interact. We can have avirulent pests and pathogens. Avirulent pests and pathogens have effectors that directly or indirectly interact with the NLR receptors, and this interaction results in triggering a pathway that leads to a defense response that successfully defeats the pest or pathogen. However, it can go against the plant's favor. Some pests and pathogens may have virulent effectors that do not trigger these defense responses and therefore successfully defeat the plant's defense responses. The successful defense response that is associated with effector and NLR interaction is called ETI, effector-triggered immunity. How this is relevant to my PhD project is that I studied two candidate R genes in the model plant Medicago truncatula. In certain genotypes of Medicago truncatula, there is a quantitative trait locus known as RAP1, resistance to actinosyphon pisum, which is the scientific name of the pea aphid. These two candidate R genes, nicknamed RAP1A and RAP1B, are NLRs that are correlated with resistance in the host to pea aphids. I did many different experiments using different scientific techniques during my PhD, but today I'd like to share a specific slice of it and some selected results. So my hypothesis here was that the RAP1 candidate R genes confer resistance to pea aphids, and my key experiment was to create transgenic plants from a non-resistant Medicago truncatula varieties genetic background. And using molecular biology techniques, I created transgenic Medicago that carried the resistance gene. So then I tested the survival of aphids on the transgenic plants. This selected result here is an aggregation of many different experiments that I did testing the resistance of the transgenic plants. And as we can see, after 2 days of infestation duration, there were significantly fewer surviving aphids on the transgenic plants compared to the non-transgenic negative controls. In fact, the pattern of aphid die-off on the transgenic plants was similar, statistically similar, to the plants with innate resistance. So this definitely supports a hypothesis that RAP1A and RAP1B confer resistance. Moving on from my PhD research, I also made my first steps into science communication during my time as a PhD student at Imperial College. For the past almost 10 years now, I have been involved in public speaking clubs called Toastmasters International. That's where I unlocked my passion for public speaking and gained a lot of experience doing a wide variety of different speeches, everything from motivational speeches to hosting Q&As. And I found I just loved doing public speaking. So naturally, when the opportunity to design and create an exhibit based off the Turnbull Labs research came up in the Imperial Festival 2018, I jumped at the opportunity. My colleagues and I had a wonderful opportunity creating this whole exhibit where we explained our research to members of the public. I also learned a lot about the fundamentals of science communication through a wide variety of short courses and workshops offered at Imperial. All of this has led to my transformation from simply being a PhD student studying plant scientist to the science communicator, Katia Plant Scientist. In my identity as Katia Plant Scientist, I share my specialist knowledge of plants with non-scientists. My aim is to explain plant science concepts in a way that is accessible and appealing to people like plant lovers, gardeners, and generally curious people who want to know more about how the world works. I have been a communicator on social media since 2021, and I'm now branching out to do more live and in-person events. I have hosted live and in-person workshops and public science lectures at venues such as the Garden Museum London and also events in my local community here in the Cotswolds. The photo is from the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul, where I recently gave a talk for the local community on the plant immune system. If anybody is curious to see the content I make, please look me up. I am just Katia Plant Scientist. That's my social media handle on all the popular social media platforms. My content takes the form of essays accompanied by infographics and photos on platforms like Facebook and Instagram. I found that one photo, one fact is a great combination for the short attention span of Twitter audiences. On YouTube and TikTok, I share long-form and short-form videos where I either share inspiring and fascinating views of my garden and other plant wonders, or give short lectures and info talks on various plant science concepts. What is next for Katia Plant Scientist? Up until now, my science communication has strictly been a hobby that I started during the last couple of years of my PhD. But what I want to do now is I want to commercialize my love of plant science communication by becoming an entrepreneur. My journey into entrepreneurship started at Imperial College thanks to their very vibrant and diverse startup culture, which is fostered by the Enterprise Lab at Imperial College. I have had a little bit of experience working with startups in the role of a plant science advisors for businesses that focused on selling houseplants and also doing vertical farming. Although those roles were quite temporary, it got me very interested in becoming a founder myself one day. Thanks to the Imperial Enterprise Lab, I've been receiving a lot of useful advice and support as a founder, and I feel like my leadership experience in the lab and in being a leader in student organizations has been excellent training for running my own future business. Now, what is my business idea? I'm sure you're probably all asking that. Well, the core of my business idea is to bring plant science to plant lovers. The problem is that plant lovers are disconnected from the world of plant science. So my product and service is live events, short informal courses, gardening guides in the form of horrible history style books, and expert one-to-one consulting with gardeners. This will be my way of transferring knowledge from the world of botany and plant science to the world of gardening. My customers will include hobbyists, professional growers, and science enthusiasts. My career story has been on a full circle journey. I started as a kid who loved taking care of plants and messing about in the dirt. From there, I became a highly motivated college student, and from there, a plant scientist. Along the way, I also learned public speaking and developed an entrepreneurial side, and all of these things have come together so that I can share this love of plant science with other people who love mucking about in the dirt with their plants. I would like to thank you all for your time and attention today, and I'm very excited to answer your questions in the Q&A session. Remember, everybody, stay curious about plants.
Thanks, Katia. Yeah, I think a theme of all three talks today is this idea of just continuing to learn, continuing to train, even if it doesn't necessarily map to the role you're in right now. So if everyone can just pop their cameras back on, ready for the Q&A. And yeah, Helen in the chat has put basically the same point that I made, so sorry for stealing your point, Helen. Um, I guess I'll sort of start with a question to all three of you, and I'll probably go in order of speakers. Um, so sort of next steps, what are there any particular fields you'd like to explore further in your career? This can be part in like the plant health realm or outside it. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah,
I think for me,
go
sorry,
ahead.
Katja. So for me, it's a bit kind of building on biosecurity. You know, around, yeah, I think somebody said in the chat around kind of the importance of plants and things like that, and what can we do to make our country a little bit more biosecure, so that we're not getting these kind of devastating plant pests coming in. So yeah, I want to kind of keep on doing that really.
Yeah, that sounds good. And Katharine, is there anywhere you think you might want to go next?
Just keep stepping forward and taking every opportunity that comes up, really. I mean, I like being able to bring sort of communications and plant health knowledge together. Really interesting what Katia, the work that Katia's doing there. Digital, I'm really interested in how we're using AI and transformation in government and digital resources, because we're all awash with data and information, and just how we best share that, get the important messages out to in the right format to the people that need to know in a timely fashion. That's what really spurs me on, I think.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting where AI and other digital tools might take us. And finally, Katja, do you have any adventures for the future?
Yeah, of course. I'm quite new to this whole entrepreneurship role. So that's the thing. Right now, I am more just kind of educating myself on how to set up and sustainably and responsibly run a business. So a direction that I'm really interested in is that of social enterprise. I've kind of realized that my business idea is really a social enterprise, which can be defined as a business that contributes a portion of its profits back into a good cause that helps beneficiaries. And some beneficiaries I would like to help would be people in my local community who want to learn gardening, but perhaps don't have a good family member or other mentor to help them. I've noticed a lot of people out here tend to learn gardening from parents or grandparents, but not everybody's parents or grandparents are around or able to teach them gardening. So I think that could be a group to help. I would also like to incorporate aspects of citizen science into my business, like some of the money could be, the profits I make could be put into funding some citizen science stuff in my local community, like insect surveys and plant surveys, things like that. So for me, my new big direction is just learning how to be a responsible and relatively successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, that sounds great. And definitely on the citizen science, I think that's something with plant health, it lends itself very well to citizen science.
Mm-hmm.
Another question for all three of you, so feel free to jump in whatever order you like. Susan has asked what you enjoy most about your various roles.
I think for me, if I may, it's about the variety. So you know, we have 4 gardens, and I get to work with the horticulture guys, artists, policymakers. Basically, every day is a little bit different, which is what I enjoy.
Yeah, the variety. Katharine, what's your favorite part, would you say?
Yeah, echoing that really, no 2 days are the same. Every day's a school day, learning constantly about even what roles other people do in other parts of the agency and across Defra, other government departments, depending on what incidents come up, outbreaks and interceptions, because once you're in outbreak mode, you know, you the structures kick in and you're part of a much wider network and a real group effort. So that sort of joined up nature of response and feeling like you're making a difference is what I really love.
Yeah, thanks. And Katja?
Well, thinking back on the various roles I've had, something that I really enjoyed about working in a lab was being able to come up with the research hypotheses and the research plans. I thought that that idea of coming up with hypotheses to test through experiments was one of the most intellectually stimulating parts of working in a lab. And they didn't always work, but hey, that's par for the course. The other part that I liked during my PhD experience was mentoring students. I mean, obviously, some students you had better chemistry with than others, but for the most part, I thought they were very polite, responsible, motivated younger adults, and it was generally a joy to work with them. I always liked that thing about finding out what they wanted to get out of their experience and helping them achieve that. They were really nice colleagues for the most part. And then in my current role, something that I like about my science communication is you can literally never run out of interesting things to write essays about or make videos about, especially when you live in a place like the Cotswolds where you're surrounded by lots of beautiful plants out in the forests and brooks and meadows, as well as in gardens too. You're just surrounded by so much botanical inspiration. So that's the thing is I love going for walks or hikes or just going out in my own garden and thinking, okay, what can I write about this week for my social media page? And you'll see something and think, well, hang on, I don't know what this flower is. I should find out what this is and write about it. And then I get to learn something and share that joy of learning with my community online. So those are some things I really like. And of course, working with the Imperial College Enterprise Lab to learn more about business and the entrepreneurial mindset has been really enjoyable so far.
Yeah, thank you. And then another question, I think perhaps more for Katharine, is this idea of having a squiggly career and moving from one field to another is how do you market yourself for these career moves?
Yeah, really good question. I am learning how to do that because it's not it's not that easy to explain necessarily. And doing a presentation like this has been a really good exercise for me to just condense it into, how do I put all my skills together and experience and kind of make that make sense. So yeah, work in progress, definitely. Happy to hear about how other people's approaches to that because it's ongoing. I would say that I think, in the work environment that we have and the just amount of change that there is in the workplace and in the world generally, it's, there very few people now stay in one sort of area of work for their whole lives. So I think it is becoming much more normalized to see. There were lots of career changes on my horticulture course, for example. Loads of bankers, nurses, early retired police force people. So, people are making switches all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, did you have anything to add as a career changer yourself?
Yeah, well, horticulture is an interesting one because, as Katharine said, it's a way in. So, as I say, I left school with nothing. I didn't realise till I was doing my PhD that I'm dyslexic. So that's another good kind of experience to go through. So you're learning something about yourself and how to manage that. And horticulture I found was a really great way in. Yeah, you can learn as much about yourself as you want about anything else.
Yeah, thank you. And Katja.
Yeah, I'd like to mention that too, because in a way, I have changed identity from somebody who is planning to have a career, a more conventional career in research, but some very difficult stuff happened in my personal life during my PhD, and it just really changed my perspective on kind of what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So here's my advice. If you want to change to new professional identity, just start calling yourself whatever it is you want to be. You know, for the last few years, I've been introducing myself as a science communicator and entrepreneur, even if I'm not being paid a salary to do those things. I'd say when you feel that change happen in your heart, if you start to feel like, you know, I feel more like a science communicator than just a researcher nowadays or a lab manager, then that's a time you can start saying, that's what I'm working on doing. Even if you haven't accomplished it yet, every dream or goal is still a work in progress. So I would say that thing that just be confident in your future plans, and you can start referring to yourself as the role you want to be before you've fully gotten there. You can say that I'm an aspiring science communicator. I'm working towards becoming this, that, or the other. I would just say it's always good to remain flexible in how you see yourself. So that would be my piece of advice.
Yeah, that's really great. And then also, I guess, along with your PhD, when you do a PhD, it does give you the flexibility to try new things and like a safe place to try things and maybe even fail at them or not like them. But it sounds like, Katja, you
Yeah.
really succeeded in these
Thank
things.
you. Yeah,
I
very,
do have,
yep.
oh, go ahead.
I see a question directly from me. May I answer that one? So,
Yeah, I was just about to ask.
yeah,
Yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah. Would you like to introduce?
Um, Yeah, of course. Thank you. So there's a question for Katja specifically on how you find the UK academic environment and specifically how does it compare to the US academic environment? And are there any differences?
That's a great question. I would say that my experience is a little bit skewed because I was only ever an undergraduate in the US and I was only ever a postgraduate here. What I have found is that when I talk to my undergraduate friends and colleagues here, their undergraduate experience was very different from a typical undergraduates in the USA and vice versa for postdocs. Here are some reasons why I chose to do a postdoc in the UK versus the USA. To put it bluntly, teaching assistant work. In the USA, PhD students are expected to do a lot of teaching assistant work, and this includes things like grading papers, helping teach classes, and also managing things like lab classes and things for large groups of students. When I was an undergrad at UT, I was kind of friends with a lot of grad students because I was already doing research and therefore somewhat part of that social world. And I have to say, when I hung out with my grad student friends, they generally liked the research, but the thing that really stressed them out was doing all of the TA work. So therefore, when I heard that in the UK, serving as a GTA, graduate teaching assistant, is more something that you choose how much commitment you want to do on that side of things, I thought, that's kind of a deal maker for me. I was thinking I would like to go to the UK where I can really focus on the research and then I can decide how much teaching assistant work I want to take on. I feel like at Imperial, there are plenty of opportunities to be a teaching assistant and it's a decently paid job, but grad students are never pressured unduly to compromise their own research in order to do TA work. So I'd say that that's an important difference between the postgraduate experience in many places in the USA, not all of them obviously, and in the UK. I think that you get to focus more on your research here and decide how much of the teaching assistant work you want to take on.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And knowing what the work's going to be like and
Mhm.
balancing that with your priorities.